They just drafted somebody that I don't imagine will be playing a whole lot in 2024, at least if one player who has changed his Twitter profile has his way, because the Texans have selected Notre Dame offensive tackle Blake Fisher with the 59th pick of the 2024 NFL draft. You got Laramie Tunsil as your left tackle, one of the best in the game. You have Titus Howard, who you paid and who changed his Twitter profile to say tackle only this offseason after playing a lot of guard last year.
Does he know that? Does he know? Do the Texans know he's just a tackle?
I wonder about that. Dell, Blake Fisher, a tackle. So theoretically, two players that you are drafting to develop and hopefully have someday be starters.
But when is Blake Fisher going to start with Titus Howard being paid and tackle only? Do we know if Blake Fisher has any versatility to play anywhere else? Because it sounds like you're drafted a swing tackle for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I mentioned Patrick Paul going to Miami because the thought is Teron Armstead is not long for that job and he might retire. So this year would be a redshirt year. Tunsil and Howard aren't in a position where they're going to be retiring after the 2024 season.
No, but when you look at where the Texans are going forward with cap space and some of the decisions they made, I don't think it's crazy to think that they just drafted Titus Howard's replacement. That maybe Titus Howard, they're not happy that has been a right tackle, a left guard for this team, has underperformed when he very poorly when he's been forced to play left guard because he's not a guard. He's clearly a tackle. He's right about what he put in his Twitter profile, but they gave him a good contract. He's not healthy very often. If you're talking about the conversation we were just having about the now versus the long term, that's where you look at your long term probably. Is your right tackle and Laramie Tunsil, he's not exactly a spring chicken. He's not the youngest guy in the NFL. He's now the second highest paid left tackle in the NFL. But drafting offensive line here surprises me. I would think that this means he's got some shot to play left guard, though.
He is somebody that has played pretty much all right tackle since starting as a freshman at left tackle. So he hasn't played another position to this point. I suppose that the Texans always look at a guy and wonder about the versatility of them as an offensive lineman. This has been true no matter who the head coach or general manager has been.
But at 6'6", 310, that speaks to just being a tackle.
Right. And especially when you read this. Now, this is from Lance Zierlein's report up at NFL.com. This is pretty interesting. An AFC personnel executive had this to say about Fisher. Fisher is the more naturally talented of the Notre Dame tackles. Joe Alt is much more consistent and technically sound. Natural talent is better than that of Joe Alt, who went pretty early, 5th overall in the first round of the NFL draft. That's certainly interesting.
So what it might be saying is once they get their hands on him and they can kind of fix some of the things that may have held them back, maybe Titus Howard won't have a choice. Maybe that whole tackle-only thing, maybe it doesn't start in 2024, but maybe 2025 he's either a guard or not on the Texans.
They've invested a lot in the offensive line the last couple of years.
They have.
Kenyon Green in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. Last year, Juice Scruggs, an early second-round pick. And now this year, another second-round pick in Blake Fisher. I will say, when you got a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, I think you always should be looking for offensive linemen.
I mean, how many did they play last year?
So many. I mean, my God, look at what they were doing at center at the end of the year. They had Michael Dieter, who was getting absolutely abused in the preseason at tackle, playing center, for God's sake. He had Drew Scruggs eventually in at left guard. You got to give George Fant a lot of credit. I thought he did a really good job as the swing tackle for the Texans last season. So now you got a guy who I guess has a little bit more upside than a George Fant with that second pick that you make today.
Yeah, this clearly feels like a long-term play, whether it's to develop him to replace a guy like Titus Howard, if you're not going to keep him long-term, if they already feel that way, if they want to move Titus inside, or to replace just George Fant, to replace the guy that you lost in free agency, which you clearly need. They brought back Charlie Heck, who's been an okay draft pick for them, honestly, and pretty serviceable as a backup. that might be just what this is. This might just be a depth signing that they're looking at the swing tackle position as a position of need for this team in 2024. And this is how they're going to solve it. So if that's their strategy, I get it. And if you don't like what else you're seeing on the board, you just take best player available. And that might also be what we see here. You're taking the best player, which they might believe is Blake Fisher, and then you figure it out from there. I mean, now he joins his former Notre Dame teammate. Him and Jared Patterson share the field quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
Pat Patterson.
You've got two offensive linemen from the same school, and you've got Titus Howard, and you've got Drew Scruggs, Kenyon Green. They're giving themselves some options once again at the offensive line spot. So we'll see.
At Notre Dame, this is not a nickname he gave himself, but Blake Fisher also has a nickname.
Ooh.
Because of how welcoming he was to recruits. Blake Fisher's known as the mayor at Notre Dame.
I should have known that. Probably should have known that.
The mayor and the locksmith, the newest members of the 2024 Houston Texans.
All right, draft is over. Let's just grade the draft. You drafted a locksmith and a mayor.
And a mayor.
A+.
Can you trust a politician?
Well, I didn't say you could trust them.
Well, hey, this guy might be protecting C.J. Stroud.